Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. So we were talking about Wallet Hub. Wallet Hub released this information about taxes throughout the United States. We, again, in New York, ranking number one in tax burden. Maybe that's why you've had so many friends, family move out of the state. It's unfortunate. You would hope that Albany recognizes that, but I think you'll see from the one-house budgets, maybe not. But this is another faction to this Wallet Hub survey. If you look at, you can look at all those numbers there on your screen, but I think something that's very telling, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse there. Nope. The highest individual income tax as a percentage of your personal income. Number one, New York. It seems that Albany, or maybe the voter, almost doesn't seem to have a problem with the taxes when we keep voting in the same, well, for instance, Governor Hochul, we keep voting in the same type of people that have this spend mentality, and very rarely do we ever see any tax cuts. So this is, or if ever, one other telling point, then we're going to get into the New York aspect of this. If you're curious, as I say, a lot of people have moved out. A lot of people have moved even across the border to Pennsylvania, where at least they're ranked 26th, right in the middle of the pack. If you look here by state, now the numbers are a little confusing. If you look at it, you go, oh, the Democrat states or blue states must be doing better. If you look at the little asterisk there at the bottom, the smaller the number, the higher the burden is in that state. So red states, meaning states that voted Republican in the last presidential election, have a lower tax burden than blue states. That's typical, and I thought worth pointing out. And maybe for those who have unfortunately started to make the decision to move, maybe that's something to keep in mind. Now, the reason I said I would tie that in to New York in general, again, not to keep promoting myself or the program, I should say, something Phil Palmisano, who has been trying to fight this, who's been trying to kind of right the ship, well, along with many of his Republican colleagues. He is going to join us on Friday to discuss this. Let me go to, I think it's right there. So we have highlights, and this is from Politico, so take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it's the highlights from the one-house budgets. They came out yesterday afternoon, if you've were paying attention to the news cycle. So that it looks like the proposals reject Hochul's plan to mandate new housing in the suburbs and upstate. Now they're going to, of course, going back to the tax burden, provide $500 million as incentives to encourage new developments. Okay, that's one avenue here. Let me scroll down so you can see a little bit of what I'm looking at here too. This is very important. We talked to Sheriff Jim Allard from Steuben County yesterday. We're going to talk to Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm tomorrow. If you look at number two, because I asked yesterday, Sheriff Allard, what can we do about the bail laws? It's frequent conversation wherever you go. The crime, the continued repeated crimes, it's really terrifying in the state. And the Senate and Assembly removed Hochul's tweaks to the bail laws that would have gave judges, which this is very important, and should be the way it is, give judges more discretion in setting bail. So that has been rejected. That is not a positive sign of things to come for our future when it comes to crime rates in New York State. Oh man, I got to take a break already. But why don't we stop there and we'll talk a little bit more about what we can expect from the one-house budgets when we come back, and then just a little bit, very short amount of time here, we're going to be talking to former Congressman Joe Sempolinski, and you can find out how you can get involved. He is the Steuben County Chairman for the GOP for the Republican Party, I should say. So let's take that short break. Again, be careful on the roads on your way into school, your way into work. You'll see those 2-hour delays at the bottom of the screen. We'll return back to the Hesselson studio right here on WYDC TV Big Fox in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I just saw that ad. Animal Control looks like it's going to be a funny show right here on Big Fox. Okay, we were discussing New York, and this is the Hesselson studio. We're broadcasting on Market Street. Please be careful on your way into school or your way into work. You'll see those delays and postponements. Oh, I already saw that I have a little bit of a spelling error. So I think you've probably seen which one. So we're going to take that off the screen as we prepare for our next guest, Joe Sempolinski. So we were talking about the one House budgets coming out of Albany. We mentioned that they will not tweak the bail laws, which is very unfortunate. This is something that many politicians, including Phil Palmisano, who will join us on Friday, have been calling for quite some time. You heard it from Sheriff Allard yesterday, and I'm sure, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm sure you'll hear it from Sheriff Schramm tomorrow on the program. Also, you'll see there that they where was I here? I'm on number, well, it would allow for charter schools. Okay, so they didn't include the pitch for charter schools. If you ever go to the New York Post, they do a wonderful job on reporting of the success of charter schools. It's always been sort of issue with the Democrat Party not wanting to support these charter schools. That's another unfortunate part of these one House budgets. And then you have, and this I think would come as no surprise. Let me, before I go to the one that's no surprise, I did see that Hochul and others wanted to ban the flavored tobacco products, but the Democrat-led legislature did not include that in their one House budgets. But they did support the $1 more tax on a pack of cigarettes. And then finally, comes as no surprise, and another reason why we're ranked number one in tax burden. And I know, I'm not saying we're all wealthy, but the Democrats in both chambers would also raise taxes on wealthy New Yorkers. That always seems to be the quote-unquote fix. We saw that from President Biden's budget recently released. Again, I think that's going to be the easy avenue that the Democrat Party always goes for. And, of course, we have a Democrat-run Albany. You've got the governor, you've got the Assembly, and the Senate. So there's a quick look at some of the, you got tax credits in there, and you've got development at Belmont Racetrack. But overall, I thought you'd want to look at the highlights as we prepare to talk to Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on Friday. So that's a quick look at what we're dealing with the one House budgets. One other just quick New York story, kind of unrelated. Not unrelated, it's New York, right? We were talking yesterday about Silicon Valley Bank donations and how Governor Cuomo's campaign chest had quite a bit of donations from Silicon Valley, or had a lot of money, in Silicon Valley banks. What we learned this morning is our Senator Chuck Schumer has been forced to return Silicon Valley Bank donations as well. This is going to be a common trend because we know Silicon Valley Bank, and that's why I have this story up on the screen, heavy donors to the Democrat Party. As it says here, this from the New York Post, Obama officials, Hillary donors, an improv actor, which seems strange. That is the board of directors. These board of directors sometimes it seems to be, I don't know, I don't want to speculate, but it seems very often that they are more about the name recognition or who they donate to. We got the ad there. If you scroll down here, I'm sorry to go so fast, maybe it'd be easier, but the Hillary donor who had to say a prayer the night that Donald Trump won because she was so scared for our country, Director Kate Mitchell. You have others. I'm not going to read the whole board. You get the idea. Obama officials, Hillary donors, a lot of it is heavily Democrat donors that were part of the SVB's board of directors. And as we talked about yesterday, and we got a really good text message regarding this, or I should say voicemail, about the bailout. They're telling us we can't use the term bailout, but the bailout by the government to protect the people that have been so vital in the donations to the Democrat Party. Let me see if I can get to that real quick. I believe it was it? Yes. This is from a viewer, and thank you to everybody that writes in. You can see at the bottom of the screen where you can text. This is a little bit longer. I had to shorten it, but I don't know how this doesn't affect all of those that are part of the functioning system, meaning us. And of course, they're going to make up that money that they promised SVB. They're going to make up that money, and that's going to come off of more fees on your bank account. But we'll continue. To sit and say that all accounts will be covered, it is a creative way to make sure the government will include all accounts, even over $250,000. And we saw that was crystal clear when they made that announcement. How would it be possible that the taxpayers wouldn't end up paying for more government waste? Exactly. To protect their tributaries, I like that term, of donations. I believe this person who wrote in, text in, I couldn't agree more. This is just the beginning. This is the slippery slope. They need to protect theirs. And we had the stories yesterday. And this is coming from both sides. I think I mentioned it yesterday that it's many on the far left, many conservatives. This is one of those issues that they seem to be trending towards agreement that this was wrong. FDIC always promised protection of $250,000 or less, and now it looks like a lot of mega donors, a lot of liberal elites, if you will, receiving this bailout from the taxpayer. Now, there's your quick overview on New York. We do have a couple stories hopefully we can get to later on, but I know that with our interview with Joe Sempolinski, that may take a little while because there's so much going on, whether it's the local elections. We want to find out exactly, at least in Steuben County, and he'll help us with Chemung as well, to find out what is going on with the upcoming elections in November, if there's primaries, the who's who, and how you can get involved. It's very easy to complain about politics. It's not as easy to get involved. So please stay tuned for that. Joe Sempolinski is going to help us out and find out how we can become more politically active. So you are watching, Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV Big Fox. As always, you can contact me. Oh, I didn't take that off. I apologize. Thank you again for that text message, but I think we already read it. So, yes, you can contact me. You see that number at the bottom of the screen, 607-358-3131. Please text today, and I'll check right before we go on the air to see if we have any questions for Joe Sempolinski. So stay tuned. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here at WYDC TV Big Fox, and you are watching Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Joe, we're on. All right here. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, and boy, am I excited. My former boss, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski. Joe, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm so excited for you, Frank.
Thank you.
I was a regular guest on the radio version, and the radio version, I didn't have to put on a jacket.
Me either.
I didn't have to comb my hair, and now I feel like this is the whole other next level up, and I'm so proud. I'm so excited for you.
Joe, this is my third show. I'm already out of ties. This is my last tie.
Oh, you just rotate them. Go back to the first one.
Yeah, no one will notice. No one will notice. Joe Sempolinski, former congressman and Steuben County Republican chairman, is our guest. We're going to talk about the Republican side of things in just a little bit. But as I said, full disclosure, you're my former boss when you were in Congress. Yep. So your first day on the job, you hire me as your communications director. Was that your biggest or proudest accomplishment?
Oh, it's up there as a proud accomplishment.
Okay.
No, we did really well.
You did.
And we joked a little bit, but all joking aside, I don't think any office, and I mean the whole office, the whole team, did more with less time in the history of the country than what we did with my unusual 4-month interlude in Congress. And that's the legislative staff, that's the district staff, and of course, that's the communications staff. And Frank was the communications director for that team. He was making sure that people knew what we were doing, and we were getting good input back from folks, and I'm very proud of what our team did.
I agree. When I was coming up with questions to ask, I started thinking about the team that you had around you, and I think it was so important to your success and how much you were able to accomplish in 4 months, which is phenomenal. I mean, you think of the years of experience, the expertise of the people you had around you, and it was a small group, but that small group packed a punch.
Yeah, and we had our chief of staff. Well, we had 2 different chief of staff. Both of them had been chiefs of staff for my predecessor. We were able to keep the district staff intact, and 5 of those folks are now working for Nick Langworthy.
That's great.
So if you call the office in Jamestown, Olean, or Corning, and you need help with a federal issue, you're getting folks that worked for me that are now working for Nick, and that worked for Tom Reed in most of those cases, and 4 out of those 5 cases worked for Tom Reed. So having that continuity in the constituent service side of things, people that are dealing with the public every day, was huge. We did almost 300 constituent cases.
That's crazy.
In 4 months,
yeah.
Which is a crazy number.
Well, and I mentioned this, when I say that I worked for you, and what were you doing after radio, and I explained the situation, I think the biggest thing that people mention about you was how impressive it was that what you could accomplish in 3 months, a little over 3 months, when some congressmen can't accomplish that in a couple terms. And I think that's a fair thing to say. Not to badmouth other people. Yeah.
And thank you. That's great. I'm very proud of it. And part of the advantage, in a way, was knowing we had a very firm deadline. And so everything was sort of based off of that. What can we accomplish in that firm deadline? And all those constituent cases, we did 11 town hall meetings. That's more than some members of Congress do in their whole career.
Right.
I'm a firm believer in the town hall meeting format. It's real interaction, it's real democracy. It's how a republic should work. And the highlight on the legislative side, of course, is passing the assistive technologies bill. We were the prime Republican sponsor introducing a bill and getting it across all the way to the finish line, signed by the President of the United States, bipartisan bill helping those with disabilities. To do all of that in just a few months, that was a real highlight, because passing a law is hard.
Yes.
People go a long time in Congress without being able to do that. So it was the advantage that we had was that experience, the staff, and then myself as a former staffer coming in. We weren't coming in totally cold, which is important for the public to be able to serve their needs and move the legislative direction of the country in a positive direction as quickly as possible.
And going back to what you were saying, I mean, 4 months, knowing that there was that hard deadline, a lot of people would have sat back and said, well, we'll do a little here, we'll do a little. But this was a whirlwind from day one until the last day. You were doing, and this is my side of things, but I think it's impressive, you were doing press calls literally hours before you were about to leave Washington.
Yeah, we that is true. We did the last one right at the end. Yeah. And that day, the last day of office, was really just a weird day. Mm-hmm. This would be Tuesday the 3rd. And most people in the country remember that day as the day where the speaker election saga started.
Yeah.
For me, I was a member of Congress until noon, and I was working until noon. I was on the phone with Nick Langworthy's staff that morning, making sure that no district stuff fell through the cracks, and they were great in transition. I was on the phone with Claudia Tenney's staff, because 3 of the counties went to Claudia, and doing the exact same thing, and making sure the last few minutes were going as well as they could, especially for constituent stuff or district stuff. And then at noon, that's it.
Yeah.
And I just turned on C-SPAN and just watched the drama, which
fun.
was very interesting for me, because an hour before, those were my colleagues, those people I worked with. And so I sort of knew them a little bit and could sort of read them a little bit, and that was made for interesting television.
I swore after I got done working in Washington I would never watch C-SPAN again. And then that happens, and I'm glued to the TV for how many days?
The whole country was watching C-SPAN that week, which was interesting.
I know. Joe Sempolinski is our guest, which I actually don't have to keep saying your name, because on TV it's right there on the bottom of the screen. Force the Radio have it. Former Congressman and Steuben County Republican Chairman. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. Joe, at the beginning I joked a little bit about hiring me, but you did have a lot of proud accomplishments, and you mentioned the bill, of course, huge for, what I liked about it was for the betterment of society. It wasn't just a throwaway bill. This was really important. You touched on it. Could you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so what Frank's referring to is our 21st Century Assistive Technologies Act. And this is a bill that's designed to get assistive technologies. Now, that could be something as simple as a walker, a wheelchair, could something be more a little technologically complex, could be something that's specific to a particular disability, in the hands of disabled folks that need it. It was an existing federal program, but it needed to be updated and reauthorized. And I know a lot of people that are out there in the public know this is an issue I'm passionate about. And I have a daughter with a disability. In her case, it's a developmental disability. This bill helped people with all sorts of disabilities, no matter what it was. And we introduced that piece of legislation with a Democratic member, and it ended up getting incorporated into another piece of legislation and then signed into law. And what was the thought process? One, this is an area I was passionate about. Two, it was an area that went through the committee on which I served. I served on the Education and Workforce Committee, and a lot of disability legislation goes through there. But strategically, I knew if I was going to be effective. At that time, I'm a pretty darn conservative Republican, and sadly, Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. Yeah. You have to find something where the two parties still agree, and disability issues is one of those places where both sides agree it's the right thing to do. And also, if you're looking at it from a nuts and bolts standpoint, let's imagine you're a person and the only thing keeping you from being in the workforce is a wheelchair.
Right.
Or a walker or something like that, and you now have access to that. Well, sure, that's the government helping you out a little bit, but the government's saving a ton of money in social benefits, and also you're now out in society being productive and fulfilled and living a better life. So it's something that all parties agree on, and I was very, very proud of, and to be able to get that from start to finish. We were the myself and one other member introduced the bill and then get it all the way signed into law by the president in that short time frame was really almost unimaginable. And to get that done through the House, through the Senate, onto the president's desk is really an exciting thing.
In 3 months. And that's your most likely your proudest accomplishment. But I think one of the most memorable parts of your time in Congress really was day one, the swearing in.
Yes, that one of the advantages of being elected in a special election is you get an inauguration speech.
Yeah.
If you're elected under normal circumstances, there's 435 House members. You can't sit there through 435 speeches. But if you're elected in a special election, they give you 2 minutes. My Democratic friends, because there was 2 Democrats that were sworn at the same time as me, they didn't abide by the 2 minutes, but I did.
Yes.
I respect the process, and I was told afterwards that made a good first impression on my colleagues, because nobody likes to be lectured by the new guy.
Right.
But we did I had a chance to have a 2-minute speech, and actually in there I highlighted my daughter, who I just mentioned was the inspiration for a lot of the policy work I was doing. She has Down syndrome in her case, and I acknowledged that she's my hero.
Right.
And the entire U.S. House of Representatives stood up and gave her a standing ovation, and I was about to lose it.
Yeah, I think everybody watching was.
Touch and go as to whether I was going to finish that speech. Simply the best moment of my entire life. To have, in a bipartisan way, the People's House speaking for the people, acknowledge her in that way was just an amazing moment in my life.
Amazing. Joe Semplinsky is our guest. Joe, can you stay with us through a couple breaks?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We're going to take a short break. This is Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here at WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio right on beautiful Marcus Street in Corning. We've got on Zoom today Joe Semplinsky, and this interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. Thanks again for being on the show, Joe. This is a lot of fun.
It's a pleasure. I'm so happy that we get to do this. We can actually see each other now.
I know, it's different.
Do this than just audio. This is much better.
Absolutely. So we were talking about your time in Congress. When a lot of people ask you, well, what was your biggest accomplishment like I did? What's the biggest surprise? What's maybe the biggest misconception about Washington?
Yeah, I would say people are still people.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And you realize very quickly that, these are not just sort of caricatures you see on TV.
Mm-hmm.
They're sort of human beings, and they are like other human beings. I describe being in the House chamber, which doesn't have assigned seating. Like you're in the Senate, you have a desk. If you're in the State Assembly, you have a desk. It's just chairs. So it's like a high school cafeteria. So you sort of very quickly have these sort of interesting social dynamics that develop where, okay, I sort of hang out with people from my state, or maybe I hang out with people from the same committee I'm on, or with me, other people that had come in a special election.
Sure.
So we were like, you transferred.
You're the new kid.
In the middle of high school, yeah, and you have to hang out with the other new kids. And so was interesting, where once you get past pretty quickly sort of where you are, and so realize you're at work, right? You're there to do a job. You're there to represent 750,000 people. Make sure they are getting access to the government, make sure you're making good laws, and speaking out on issues you care about when something bad's happening, you point it out and make a stand. But you're dealing with real human beings, and with all of the positives and all of the negatives
right.
of that. So that cuts both ways as to whether it's a positive or a negative on that. But that was interesting, sort of just interacting with these people that you see on TV as just a person that you work with was interesting.
I like how you equated it one time to basically it's like transferring into high school 4 months before graduation.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
And I was sort of adopted by the other transfers, people that had won special elections, especially the ones that had won recent special elections. I spent a lot of time with Congressman Finstad from Minnesota. He was sworn in like a week before me, so we were figuring this all out together. And we were on the same committee, so that made it easier. And then also I was sort of adopted by the graduating seniors, which is people that were leaving either voluntarily or involuntarily, that weren't coming back to the next Congress. And they viewed me as one of their own, too, as somebody that was not returning to the 118th Congress. So that was interesting. And but it was good being in both of those groups because You learned about people that were very new, but also about people that were very experienced in some cases that were leaving. And I got to spend a lot of time with some really interesting folks from all over the country, and learn about their perspectives on the issues. How something affects New York may not be the same as how it affects Florida, and that's the beauty of putting everybody in one room at one time, is you force them to learn from each other.
Joe Sempolinski is our guest. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. Joe, everybody asked you this, so I feel as if I'm obligated to. Why did you decide to run for such a short term?
Well, it'd be an honor to serve for 4 minutes, is what I said.
Thank you.
500 times, and it's the truth. It's 100% the truth. It really was the honor of a lifetime. And we cast, with our office, we cast about 112 votes, I think, give or take a couple. Yeah. And every time I did that, I was speaking for 750,000 human beings, every man, woman, and child, regardless of political affiliation, in the 23rd Congressional District. And so it was an honor to do it. Really, the two districts are very different. You know, Mr. Langworthy, who I've known for 12, 13 years, a long time. We've had a great transition, and we talk every few weeks or so now.
He stopped by the studio the other day.
I saw that.
Yeah, just to see it. Isn't that nice?
We talked about the show, actually, Nick and I. And so we stay in touch, and I saw him about a week and a half ago at an event. And, his district, 40-some% of it is Erie County, and none of Erie County, that's the Buffalo suburbs, for those who don't know, was in the district I was representing. Right. And about five counties are not in the new district. That would be the Finger Lakes area, 3 counties up there in the Geneva, Penn Yan area, and then the Ithaca, Owego area are now with Congressman Molinaro. So we needed somebody that could serve that old district,
right,
and actually knew that old district and could actually do something with the time, which is, as we were just talking about, because of the experienced team, because of the background I had, we were able to actually make use of that time. Somebody who's actually going to focus on those areas and not be off campaigning. That was important from a governing perspective. And then for the party, if you remember, the same day as the special election was the primary between Palladino and Langworthy. Very contentious, divisive primary. And I was somebody that could inject some unity into that and make sure that we didn't lose the special election. But we weren't doing too well in special elections at that time. We lost the other special election that day in New York. We lost the Alaska special election about that time. The other special elections in weeks preceding were more competitive. By putting a unity candidate that everybody on the right could agree on, every conservative, every Republican could agree on, it kept that race from being nationalized. And we probably saved the National Republican Congressional Committee at least $1 million, if not more, by doing it that way.
Joe Sempolinski is our guest. We got to take another short break. When we come back, we're going to ask Joe what he's doing now. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services, and we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Play our music there, coming into the program. All right, there we go. We got Joe Sempolinski as our guest. Let me switch over to the main Zoom camera here so we can see Joe. All right, Joe, this interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services, and we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on Marcus Street. Joe, everybody asked me, Joe did a great job, and I'm not just saying this because you're my boss. You don't pay me anymore. I don't have to say these things.
That's true. Yeah, we have no financial connection.
No.
Yeah.
So, but I'm saying it from the heart. There are people who said you did a great job, and they wonder where you went to next. So tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I am Chief of Staff for State Assemblyman Joe Giglio.
Okay.
And I'm really grateful for how that worked out, because if you recall some of the twists and turns of my candidacy, I was running for 7 months.
Yeah.
I was running for Congress pending redistricting. And then the first map was put in place, which ultimately got thrown out in court, and it looked like I wasn't going to be running.
Right.
And so I took a job with Assemblyman Giglio. I worked there for about 2 months. And then we won the court case, and the special election happened, and I sort of left.
What a wild ride. Yeah.
2 months of campaigning and 4 months of nothing. And he let me have my job back,
that's great.
Makes my wife happy. I get a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah.
So he represents Cattaraugus, Allegheny, and Western Steuben County. So
Okay.
it's the district I live in. I live in his assembly district, and every person that's in that assembly district was in the old version of 23rd District, and actually they're all in the new version of 23rd District too. So it's areas that I know really, really well, and have spent a lot of time in all aspects of my career working in that area. So it was a really good fit, and I'm pleased that I can still be serving some of the same constituents I was serving in my time as a congressional staffer and then time as a congressman.
your first day back when you went to the office, did you say, that's not how we do things in Washington? We did
It
them.
was weird.
Yeah,
First
it
day
had to
back,
be.
They hadn't touched my office.
Oh.
Like, all my papers were just there. And I was on the phone with Nick Langworthy. He called me a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, and he was asking me, how are you settling in? I asked him how he's settling in. We sort of finished up some last transition stuff.
Sure.
And I told him that story. I go, they hadn't touched any of the office. It was weird. And Nick goes, for like a second, you thought it was a dream, didn't you? And I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Like it never happened.
Like, psychologically weird. Like, did I actually leave? What happened? Did I just,
Like
fall asleep? Weird.
the last episode of Newhart or something. You just wake up and nothing happened.
Yeah. No, it wasn't even. It was a whole different show. Like,
Yeah. Now, I got to ask this. Will you think about ever doing it again? Running for Congress?
I would certainly think about running for office again. Obviously, we have a new congressman,
Sure.
Mr. Langworthy, who I voted for, who I campaigned for. We did a lot of campaigning in the general election, where I was sort of his surrogate, his substitute. We realized we had an extra congressman lying around, so we put him out on the campaign trail,
Yeah.
which was great. And Nick's a young guy who's doing a great job
Okay.
and is settling in. So I think that he's going to be in there for at least the foreseeable future, I would think. Maybe if we get a Republican president or something, move on to other things, who knows?
Sure.
I would say probably I would look at running for office
Okay.
again, and there may be opportunities for other offices that happen sooner than a congressional opportunity. I'm a team player. I think there's nobody in the country that's proven that more than I have.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I tend to look at where there's an open opportunity as opposed to where there's already a Republican who's doing a good job. I don't want to disrupt that. I want to sort of grow the party. But if there was an opening, an open seat in the state legislature or something like that, I would certainly take a very serious look at it. And I would think that may be more of a possibility, just based on the current political dynamics. That may be more of a possibility sooner than a congressional opportunity.
Great. Joe, we got time for one more break, and then you give me a couple more minutes. Is that good?
Sure.
All right.
Yep.
We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Uh-oh, they're telling me we're running out of time, Joe, so we only have a little bit here on Zoom.
All right.
I hope they can't see it. So, final question, because I said I was going to talk more about this, but you are the Steuben County Republican chairman.
Yep.
Petition season now, your favorite time of year next to Christmas. What should people know if they want to get involved, either by running or helping a campaign?
Yeah, they should reach out to me. My email is joe.sempolinski@gmail, joe.sempolinski@gmail.com, and they can send me a note if they want to join the committee, get involved. And right now, as you mentioned, we're doing petitions. So people are out collecting petitions to get people on the ballot. We have the county clerk up for re-election. We have the district attorney up for re-election. We have a coroner that's an open position where we have a great candidate running, Steve Kopp, for that. And then 10 of the 17 county legislative seats are up, plus almost 200 town positions and city positions throughout Steuben County. So there's a lot of opportunities to get involved supporting a candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And I always encourage folks, if they live especially in a smaller community, they're usually looking for people to run for office, not just be on the committee. So this is the time of year, early in an off year, where we start building up, leading up into the governor's race, leading up into the presidential race, and eventually into the governor's race 2 years later. So a lot of times people sort of wake up right before the presidential race, and they want to get involved in politics. Now is the time to do it, sort of build up into that. I'm very excited. We have a lot of new committee members around the county, a lot of new energy in the party, and we're doing very, very well. I think we're going to have a good year here in Steuben County for the Republican Party. And then next year, of course, we need to make sure that Joe Biden is a one-term president, or than we can to put a little bit more competency back in the White House.
And I will say, I know I've mentioned before, if you take out petitions for a candidate, you are that candidate's best friend.
They will love you until the day you die.
Yes.
If you are out knocking on doors in cinches, especially now that we do it in March. We used to do petitions in June, but now that we do them in March. I was out in the storm yesterday doing petitions.
Oh, did you really?
And then the wind picked up, and I'm like, I'm an idiot. I'm going to go gonna go play with my kids.
Yeah,
instead of doing
somewhere warm. I always look like the kid from Christmas Story when I go out. I'm like, if I tip over, someone will have to come pick me up. It's getting cold, but yeah, it's petition season time. Joe, I have to let you go because I think Zoom's going to run up. But thanks so much for being on the show, and let's make this a regular thing like in the past, maybe once a month. How's that sound?
I'm so excited, and I think Big Fox made a great decision, and your sponsors made a great decision, and I'm so happy we got this platform in our community.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yep.
All right. Bye. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with MA Neal Financial Services interview and the Hesselson Studio here on Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on The Patriot. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're just about out of time. Oh, are we? It looks like we may be... We're getting reconnected. I don't know if you can hear me, but it looks like we may be having a little bit of a difficulty. All right, there we go. I think we had a little bit of a technical glitch there. Apologize about that. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson Studio. We're just about out of time. I want to thank Joe Sempolinski for being our guest. Tomorrow on the program, we will have Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm. He'll be joining us around the same time, about 7:20. And then on Friday, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano will be our guest. Let me put up my contact information. If you have any questions for either guest, it's never too early to send. There's the best way to reach me, text or call, and it will listen to your voicemail if you leave a voicemail. There is the email. We've got a really exciting lineup next week as well, so make sure that you always stay tuned every weekday morning starting at 7 a.m. for Frankly Speaking. I had a couple last minute things, but I don't think I have my browser open. If you didn't join us at the very beginning of the program, the tax burden by state, New York ranked number 1. We're going to ask the Assemblyman about that on Friday, but I guess you can always say we're number 1, just in the wrong metric system. We also have, in the wrong metrics, I should say. One thing I did find kind of surprising, I don't have this story up. I don't think. Let me try. Let me try on the fly. No, I thought I might have X'd out of it. But there we go. George Santos. George Santos has filed, this from CNN, filed paperwork that would allow him to run for re-election. The scandal plagued George Santos, if you've been paying attention to that. Speaking of lies, Biden claims Republicans are the ones calling for defunding the police. We've been having that conversation the last couple days. That seems like you can't even say a stretch. Defunding the police? The Republicans are the ones defunding the police. According to the president, it sounds like it may be campaign season, maybe wanting to change those poll numbers around a little bit and convince people that it's been the Republicans this whole time. So that's enough about the update on the news. If you want to contact me, if you agree, disagree, there is the information one more time. Oh boy, this show went quick. They go quick every morning, folks. So have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow morning with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox from the Hesselson Studio.